So today we're going to talk, well, right now we're going to talk about the CI/CD pipelines using SDK and CLI. I do have a really quick poll that I'm going to send out real right now. So just kind of to get an idea of where everybody's at, if you already have your CI/CD process set up for Ascend pipelines, maybe you have it set up for other processes, maybe you don't have anything. So I'm going to go ahead and push that out and we'll see where everybody is. Okay, so what is CI/CD? Continuous integration and continuous deployment. This means that you're able to integrate changes programmatically to your Ascend pipeline and deploy those changes, treating your pipeline like software engineers treat applications. So getting started with CI/CD can sound overwhelming. I'm going to show you a couple of ways that you can implement CI/CD for your Ascend pipelines right now. And remember, the demo is going to be real simple. So nice little starting place, and then you start simple and then you can start building that complexity as you implement it. We're going to go over some of the patterns. We're going to talk about doing local and UI development. We're going to talk about use cases, and then we're going to talk about using your CI/CD platforms to push the changes to staging, UAT, and prod. All right. So if you're familiar with CI/CD process, this is really a simplified version. You're going to have source control that's going to be able to track any changes to your code. You would definitely be doing some kind of local development, and then you'd have a CI/CD platform like Jenkins or Circle CI. There's GitHub Actions, and then you can also do it with GitLab. So lots of ways to implement CI/CD. And really, it's going to depend on your organization. So some organizations, they might have a dev, staging, UAT, and prod environment, or maybe they just have dev, stage, and prod. I've even seen, well, I've seen a lot of teams that are really smaller data teams that just work with dev and prod. So it depends on your organization. It also kind of depends on spending as well. Sometimes having, a staging environment might start to become a little costly. So sort of just depends on what you're doing right now in your organization. So using source code product, that's where you save your code, of course. That's where the code changes are tracked. You typically would be developing off of your production branch. You create a new branch, do your development there, push that to a dev branch, or commit it to dev, build those tests, run any kind of like PyTest or Python unit testing here. Once that's actually deployed into your dev environment, you typically would create a pull request or a merge request, have that reviewed by another developer, and then that developer would end up merging and promoting that code, which would be then deployed into production. And a lot of that's going to be handled with your CI/CD platform. Okay. With Ascend, this is just a really quick sample Ascend process. So it looks the same, right? These are typical steps that most, if not all, organizations are going to take in their CI/CD process. It's not super new or innovative or anything like that. But with Ascend, we do have the option here to use the CLI and download any of the changes that you've made or configurations that you've created, new data flows, new data services from Ascend directly from that UI using the CLI, and provide the ability for you to actually do some development locally on that preset of code, or you can also just do everything locally and develop using the SDK. So each of these processes are the same. Whenever something is applied, that's going to be using the CLI as well. You can easily deploy a pipeline using the CLI based on the SDK that you can download from the UI. And I'm going to show that to you in our demo. Before I start there, I want to kind of go over some pros and cons of using code first versus the UI first. So with code first, definitely the pros are going to be that it's the cleanest path to a traditional CI/CD process. It's great for software engineers that are used to working in the code all the time. You can do unit and integration tests sooner. There's definitely more logging during development. Some of the cons might be that there is a learning curve when it comes to using the Ascend SDK and the protobufs. So definitely be aware of that. And then there's also the thought, kind of just to put in your mind, testing that locally, it may not necessarily match your runtime on the platform. So just sort of keep that in mind. So UI first development, the pros are that it's definitely accessible to everybody. Ascend's really great to use, really easy to create, fast development cycle of just creating these dynamic, these pipelines so quickly, right? Like it's amazing how quickly you can develop. It's going to run natively on the Ascend platform. You really could be testing on the actual data whenever you run and create your pipeline in the UI. There's also the data discovery in the UI that's great. So basically what we're talking about there is that you can query any of the read connectors or the transforms to sort of look at your data and figure out what your transformation is going to do. So you can see that output right there when you're writing SQL. It's great. Some of the cons might be that, if you are developing more of the custom code, so the custom read connectors or the custom Python transforms, that's going to be a little more difficult. It's going to take a little longer just based on the complexity itself, mainly because you would have a hard time, viewing those logs while you're developing. And then lastly, there's no version control yet. All right, so starting with the UI. So in this demo, we're going to look at a data flow that already exists. We're going to download that using the CLI. And if you missed it, I definitely recommend that you check out the intro to Ascend CLI with Cheyenne and Quang Lee. It was really great. It'll help you understand what these commands that I'm going to be showing you are doing. It'll help you get the Ascend CLI set up in your system. So that's what we're going to do right now. I'm going to talk a little bit about our example. So this right here, let me put it to the right one. There we go. So this is our example data flow in the UI, and it has a native connector for the Amazon S3. It has Snowflake SQL transform and another Snowflake SQL transform. And then if you look here, we actually have a custom Python read connector. It's just pulling some cat facts for us. And it's just loading as a nice long JSON string. And so in our transformation, we actually have our custom PySpark transformation where we're taking that information and we're parsing it out and creating a nice little table. You can see here. All right. So by using the Ascend CLI, you can quickly and easily, with just this simple code, download a data flow. So in this command, we are just downloading the data flow from the intelligent pipeline data service. And this is our data flow name right here, the dev intelligent pipelines. Now I've done this already, so I just kind of want to show you what that looks like once it's downloaded. So you'll see what's going to appear here is in your root folder, it's going to be Ascend. Then you're going to have the breakdown of the data service and the data flow. And what we have here is the actual code. And this is the Ascend SDK. And if you look through here, you could see that it's constructing the data flow. We do not have any data feed connectors in our data flow currently in dev. And this is just kind of going to go through each individual component. So we saw the read connector. It has all of the detail for that read connector, all of the configuration. There's our one transformation. Here is our custom read connector. And if you notice in here, there's actually going to be a code path. I look right here. This code path is pointing to components, and then it's pointing to the custom Python file. So when I go to components, I can actually see this custom code. So that was our read connector right here. So there's all the custom code for that. All right. So I continue on. I see another transformation, and this is going to point right directly to the SQL file that's being used for this component. It has all of the information, all of the configuration for each of these. We don't have any data feeds or groups. That's fine. Yeah, and as you can see, actually, this has the data flow applier here. So if I ran this, it would actually update my data flow in Ascend right now. But we're going to show you how to do that automatically using the CI/CD process and the CLI. So what I want to do in this UI is I want to do a few little quick easy things. Like, let me create a data feed. All right, and I think I'm going to create a write connector too. So let's just write this. We'll say cat, all cat breeds. Okay, my upstream is going to be my cat transformation. Let's say all cat breeds. Okay. So I'm using the UI to create some components here for the simple development, right? And then I'm going to move back. It's like this is running, it's up to date. So I'm going to move back to my code. All right, so if I were to run this code here, I should start seeing, because this is set up, I'm in my code editor, I have everything set up, so it's pointing to my Git repository. I should see the changes that come in. All right, yep, looks like I have some changes here. Let's see, yep. Let's see what those changes are. So I would expect to see that I have a new write connector, which I do, there it is. And then I should have a data feed. Yep, there it is. So perfect. So now I've just updated some components. I've downloaded it to my source control. I have that all set and ready to go. Okay. So let's say that you want to just do some code first development. You don't want to work with the UI. You just want to focus on that. I would recommend checking out John and Kwani did a great presentation on creating some dynamic pipeline generation. Totally amazing. So check that one out. It should be available right now, as it was already, I think it was done today. Yeah. Okay, so now we're going to talk about test cases and data. So we talked about one of the cons was whenever using the UI that it can be difficult to create really complex read connectors that are custom or create custom transforms. Ascend now has an amazing testing framework that has been deployed very recently in the last month. I'm going to share this. Yeah, so we have this available. We have it covered for you. So I'm going to do a quick demo where we're looking at that same case where we're going to kind of work through what the test looks like. Okay, perfect. So we already have a preset test here. So real simply, just looking to see, we know that our transform for our cat data is going to take and parse all that JSON, and it's going to create columns. So here we're saying, hey, I want to just make sure that all of my columns are there, right? We're asserting that. And this is using our new Ascend IO test framework. Really cool. So you could do this with transforms, custom transforms, and you can also do it with custom read connectors. So that's really exciting. All right, so let's just kind of test this out. I'm going to run PyTest and see what happens. So PyTest should get me what I need. It's running my test script here. Yep, and it passed, no problems. Now, if I were to make some change to the code and, accidentally remove this unintendedly, let's see what would happen. Now, this is important because sometimes whenever we're developing, we do make changes in areas that we know we're trying to change. So if I was purposely trying to change this, then I would go in and update my test to remove pattern. But if I wasn't trying to purposely do that, then that's something I wouldn't do, meaning that these test cases are awesome in catching any unintended outcomes in your updates to the code. Okay. So I'm going to save that. Next, I just want to make one more little change. So I'm going to change this SQL as well. I'm going to change this back to yellow. All right. So I have a few changes here. Perfect. All right. We're going to talk about pushing to stage UAT and prod. So right now we have everything set up where we have downloaded the changes that we made from the UI, and then we made an additional change to the code on one of the SQL statements. So now I want to be able to push that and run my tests automatically, and then eventually create a pull request, merge it, and deploy my changes to UAT. That's our goal today. And it's a really simple example. And in our example, we're using the data flow to distinguish between the dev and UAT. But before I finish that, I do want to talk a little bit about organizing your data services and then just some ideas for naming conventions. So a few ways that you can organize your different development or UAT environments is going to be using data services. And yesterday, Alex had a great talk talking about cost management, really went into how you can utilize the reporting from Ascend to identify the cost for each data service. So keep that in mind whenever you're looking to create the naming conventions you want here. So you definitely want to get some organizational domain context in there, specifically for what Alex was talking about, where you might have a data service that is your finance data service, right? You might have one that's marketing. You might have one that's kind of a core data service. So keep that in mind whenever you're thinking through your process here. Another thing to think about is the environment, of course. So you could have your development, your UAT, or your prod be separate data services. Now, where that kind of comes into play as well is in the Gen 2 products, the data planes and the Gen 2 Spark. You can set the clusters per data service. So you might have a smaller cluster for your dev environment, which helps with costs, like Alex had mentioned. You also can do that with the data planes. So if you are using BigQuery, maybe you want to have one data service that uses one project and the other data service uses the other project that has a smaller data set, or maybe removes data periodically, that kind of thing. So think about controlling cost, think about identifying your organizational domains. And then think about your data lifecycle, which would be if you're using, you know, the bronze, silver, gold, go for that. If you're using just raw staging prod, you can do that. Really just sort of depends on how you're organizing that holistically. Okay. So we have some changes here. I'm ready to commit those. So I'm going to say add right connector and data feed, and then update. Yeah, all right. All right, so this is the Circle CI, and you can see that the tests are actually running right now for me. So while that test is running, I just want to kind of bring you over here. That is all based on the configuration. So this one runs pretty quickly. I think it's about a minute. So I'll start with just kind of understanding that any of your CI/CD platforms, they're going to allow for you to create very custom configurations based on what your process actually is. So for this example, like I said, really simple. We're just setting some parameters here. We're creating some tests. So you can see what's running right now is we're getting this image, we're installing Python packages, and then we're basically running PyTest, which is exactly what we did locally, right? Let's see if that's done. So that was a success. I'm going to walk through the rest of this after I push to prod. So in our process, we're going to go ahead and compare and create a pull request. I'm merging to main. This is where we would have a reviewer. And I'm going to go ahead and push merge. So we can see that that's running now. And then I'm going to walk back to share this tab. I think I might have missed this. Sorry, guys. Basically, we just created a pull request and merged it. Yeah, sorry about that. All right, going back to the configuration. So we have our parameters here. Our job, this was the test job. All it's doing is running the PyTest. And then our deploy pipeline, what it's doing is it's using the CLI right here. So it's saying that it wants to apply that data flow. Really awesome thing that you can do. So it's applying the data flow right here, the dev intelligent pipeline. It's actually applying it to the same data service, but a new target, which is one of the parameters that we had right here, which is UAT. And the workflow, whenever we deploy UAT, so basically we're saying anytime that there is a merge or commit to our main branch, we want to deploy the pipeline and run that test, that job. And then anytime that it's not the main branch, we're just running our test. Just a real simple version. And again, it's okay to start really slow and really simple and then build on that complexity. So yeah, now we can see that that's done. And let's go ahead and share this tab. Okay. Yep, there we go. There's our UAT. So we were in dev. Here's our UAT. And now you see that all of our new components are there and ready to go. Okay. I do want to mention that on the first day, on the 12th, Sarwat from Biome, she did an amazing presentation about how Biome is using the Ascend SDK and some YAML configuration files along with GitLab to implement their CI/CD process. So if you want to kind of get another flavor of how this can be accomplished, definitely check out her talk as well. All right, and I think that wraps it up.
All right, that was an awesome talk, Tessa. Thank you very much for closing out our summit and our advanced training today. There is one question that was out there. Someone was asking if there is a second Ascend environment needed for development and staging.
Oh, yeah, that's a great question. I have seen some customers that have done that, where they've had their development set up in one environment versus prod in another environment, but that's not necessarily needed. You can do it with your data services. You can do it based on the data flow names. So there are a lot of options. So it just really depends on how you want to handle it with your organization.
Yeah, and I think with the rollout of the data mesh, where we have all the data pipelines, but in general, the way Gen 2 works, where you can start to assign clusters to different areas, it allows you to have these different environments on one environment of Ascend instead of having to have multiple. So as people start to move to the Gen 2, that will be awesome. So thank you very much for your time and all the sessions you did this week. It was very helpful for our audience. I appreciate it.
A lot of fun.